Welcome to a special audio only version of the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And it's still firm Spook.
What are you doing in South Australia, Spook? Gather round was last week.
Have I missed it?
Yeah, you missed it
Are we
by.
playing?
Oh, we
I'm
played.
standing in the Played Oval.
Oh, okay. That's a.
Where is
You're probably out in open space like Patrick Lipinski. Um.
it?
So going into the game, the Goey came back, and Sullivan was a late out, and Mason
Yep.
Cox came in. Do you think the Coxie selection was merited?
Probably based on the outcome, definitely. On his goal kicking, no.
Yeah, I'll get to him a little bit later because I actually think he had a pretty good night outside of the goal
No, I
kicking.
agree. I think he had a great night, except in front of the sticks. But
Yeah.
anyway, yep.
All right. So, really, it's just almost a consummate performance. Um, Dominated it from the outset. There's probably a few tiny momentum shifts, but we handled them all with aplomb. That 35 goes okay. Flexed his muscle really for the first time this year.
Yeah, actually, because I want to talk about that. When you say flex the muscle, what do you mean? As
Oh,
in just
I mean, he's been getting numbers and all that, and he's done some nice things. But yesterday, he was truly destructive.
Yeah, no, I'd like to add a bit of physicality to his bow as well, but we'll talk about that as well.
Well, the other thing too is, I think, particularly with Long there, they just got some muscle and some size around the ball. I mean, Pendlebury's a big guy too. Long, I thought had a pretty interesting night. I thought the first quarter there was it played like a final, and there was some players, and I'll fucking name them so I can get bagged later on. I thought Perryman was diabolical at the start, just panicked a few times, made a few poor decisions. Lipinski started okay, but then just really made some bad errors. Pendlebury made some, like, I'm not saying he succumbed to depression, but Pendlebury made some really bad blues. The Goey made some bad blues in that first quarter. Uh, but then, like as
Yeah,
the
I think
game
that.
went on, yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was say a lot of that. I reckon was the tempo of the game. It was frenetic right from the first bounce, and I think people like Perryman and stuff have they really played in such a high pressure type of game before? Do you have those at GWS?
Has he
I've no
played?
idea.
Has he played in the football team before? I don't even know about that. No, look, I agree that because I was going to say that Long I thought worked his way into it. He didn't have the game he had last week, but I thought in the second quarter he was doing some really instrumental things, just contesting the ball, tapping it on, just putting his body on the line and that sort of stuff. And that it was the sort of game where I think the chemistry of the midfield works so well that even though Pendlebury and Sidebottom weren't having Sidebottom was actually pretty good as he got into it. But it allowed Nick to just sort of play this manic game that I don't think Brisbane knew how to contend.
Yeah. Now, you'll have to excuse my memory of this because I was watching it at distance on a laptop. But he played off halfback flank a fair bit, didn't he, Nick? Did he?
Okay, it's hard to tell on television. He was in the middle at times. I mean, that's some sort of interesting midfield rotations. Like the go, I didn't think it was that great, but physically he sort of added a little bit. Like there was a couple of times, sorry, I'm going to move a little bit aside. There's a couple of times that Mason Cox, he just tapped it to like Nick running, streaming
Yeah,
past. It was just scintillating. I mean, I like Darcy Cameron, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good a ruckman in the centre bounces as Mason Cox.
no, but he certainly makes up for it around the ground, though. He
Yeah,
was.
I was brilliant around the ground. Um, what's his name? The guy we got from Brisbane, McStay. I thought he looked like Wayne Carey in the first quarter. He just
Yeah.
he
What did he end up finishing with? 3, I think, wasn't it?
let me look up the stats, which I have at hand now. I'll tell you when I find his name.
Because those 3 were kicked at, though. It was clearly the first half. He missed that snap from that free
Yeah,
in the. I'm
yeah,
sure it was 3.
yeah. Kick
Yeah,
3 goals, one.
yeah. I think the big boys really stood up in the forward line in the first half, and that was crucial at the time because it really did become one of those contested marking type games. Brisbane were killing us around the ground with their marking and their delivery, and that was in both sides in the first quarter. It was certainly translating to inside 50s. It was just unfortunate. I think in a lot of the instances, our inside 50s ended up going straight to them, and they were killing us on the rebound. And luckily, I think we adjusted to that, and it sort of tapered off.
Yeah, one of the things that frustrated me at times in the first half was, and I don't know if they addressed it, in this halftime, break, but sort of seemed to play or tried to play for a little bit of finesse at times. And there was these like short dinky kicks and stuff that would intercept it or just miss their target. And I don't know if McRae told them at halftime, hey, just stop fucking around with it, just move the ball. Um,
I tempo
it,
clearly changed. I thought the same too. That it reverted back to that pure chaos in the second half.
yeah, and to get like a 9 goal thrashing against the reigning premier is you picked it last week. You thought they were just sort of going. It's an amazing return. It's really hard to sort of look at anyone there outside of Will Hoskin Elliott and say they had a bad game.
No, it's yeah. Look, and a few of them I think were down, but that was more, I reckon, that the absolute guns were just they grabbed that game by the scruff of the neck and just didn't want to let go.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
I
like
was go
you
on.
were talking long at the start with the slow start. I just don't think he was actually needed in the engine room as much. Yeah, Nick and Josh were just going ballistic,
Yeah, but
and
on
then
the
it got dragged later into the game when I think they started close checking Nick a little bit more. And then Ned sort of stepped up and lifted or filled the void a little bit more, which was good.
But I think you get the just having Long there and the way he played last week means they have to now pay attention to him. So which allows Nick to get away a little bit. So I think even though he might not have had been as instrumental or he might not have needed his grunt as much, I think just him being there it takes pressure off Nick. So Nick could play the game that he wanted to play. Josh was fantastic. Both of them ended up with Nick ended up with 38 disposals and Josh ended up with 30. So they both had really great games. Nick ended up with 8 clearances and 645 meters gained. Josh ended up with 599 meters gained. So they were both fantastic last night.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
So what do you
You,
say? Sorry, go on.
there's not enough superlatives actually for the performance. So look, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I did tip us to win, but it was only like I'm thinking of the margin. It was about 5 to 10 points. I thought we might just get over the line, but I didn't expect that level of dominance. They embarrassed Brisbane to a point.
Yeah,
It was just incredible.
yeah. I mean, I thought we were going to get something like last week against Sydney. I mean, sort of joked about Hoskinelli. He was quiet, but he did kick an instrumental goal, and that was something too. I can't remember. I'll actually look it up when I eventually find my stats. Really early, like we kicked 4-2 to their 2-4 in the first quarter, and they went to 4-8. So they kicked 2 goals 4, and we went to 8-3. So we kicked 4-1. So finally, we had some accuracy in front of goal, which allowed us to apply scoreboard pressure.
Was that
Uh,
long lived?
sorry.
That long lived? That accuracy?
Well, we ended up kicking 16-9, so we sort of fell off a little bit, but
Oh,
you
no,
know,
I was actually up. But the third quarter, I think I was frustrated up probably up until about the last 10 minutes with we were just dominating and just not getting the return on the scoreboard. I think at one point we kicked about 2-4 or something,
well in
but then we
that first quarter we kicked 4-5 overall.
yeah, we had that little brace of goals in the second half of the third, which I think is when it actually there was that. I think one of the turning points was that moment where as Bobby Hill ran down Zorko.
Yeah, yeah, that was fantastic.
That was just like the powder keg for them losing the plot. Yeah, you obviously would have seen the footage as well, but there was
Zorko going off, basically,
a few him and Fagan having a bit of a heated exchange. I think that's sort of like they in the distance they sat then. Like he sat as further away as he could. It sort of smacked of a little bit of frustration
it's just petulance. It's just fucking take your lumps, Zorko. You fucked up. Take responsibility. I mean, of that, I don't give a fuck what Brisbane do, but I imagine Fagan would have had to rip into him in the room and say, "You do not fucking disrespect me like that on the field in front of the other players, and potentially harm, impact team morale and just the unity of the side. It's just a fucking shit. I mean, Zorko's got form on the board for being a dick,
uh,
but like to do that to your senior coach, I thought that was actually pretty poor. And if I was the president of Brisbane, I would have said to Fag, you should just went up to him and just said, you do not fucking behave like this. Pull your fucking head in. And I know I can't remember when they made the sub, but I would have just subbed him the fuck off just as a lesson, just saying, you don't fucking do this, you prick. But again, he's got form.
I think if I was liberating, I think that's what Fagan said.
Well, you're a prick. You're a dick. Yeah, anyway, I mean, enough about Zorko. It's not the Zorko rant, the dick. It's interesting. Like, I was looking through the comments that we got on, from for last week's thing. Just going to highlight one at the moment. Bring it ahead from Bernard Parsons. You blokes are too tough on our players. Leave Schultz alone. Think of his mother. What?
Is
Schultz
his
has
mum
been,
watch?
I don't know. His mother must be watching us. Sorry, mum. Schultz has been worth his place ever
Mother's
since. Schultz has been worth his place ever since he joined us. Well, given we had about 98 injuries last year, I don't think he could have been dropped if they tried. The goalie has been a match winner since 2017. So us saying that he was not great for the last 18 months or something um, translates to 8 years. Long at a day out, we should not expect too much of him. Dove is American. Spook, keep it Australian.
actually no, it's actually past tense. But anyway,
I don't ever remember what you said, Dove. And
so
look, and Bernard, think of Spook's mother. Fucking damn it.
but thanks for your feedback, Bernard.
What do you think of stuff like that?
Um, I think sometimes you just scratch your head about what the. I mean, I think when you struggle to understand what the context of it is, it's just odd feedback. I mean, everyone gets it. You put your opinions out there into a public forum. You always get snarkiness back for whatever reason. Just people don't have to agree with you. It's as simple as that, and they're entitled to voice their opinions, and that's fine.
People would consider us snarky.
Yeah, we are. We're a couple of pricks.
Good.
We should hang out with Zorko.
Sub us off, Fagan. No, I don't know. I'm fucking constantly bemused by people who push back when either of us, but it's usually against me, when we push back and say someone didn't have a great game, and then it's like, oh fuck, yeah, what about the 2023 grand final? It's like, okay, round whatever it is this year, somehow players are exonerated because fucking 2 years ago they played in the premiership team. I'm really I think this is really typical of the Collingwood psyche of do not say a fucking thing bad about your players. And it's like, all right, never ever hold them to any accountability and they will improve if that's the case. Really, fuck off.
Yeah, there
You
is
know,
a element of our supporter base that just wants that sunshine and lollipop approach. I think when we always set out to do this, it was always going to be about just a balanced personal opinion type piece. If you want just endless gushing, go listen to Swoop Luke. I'm
yeah.
sure it's one. Everything's always wonderful, and I think a lot of people just want that. They just want that constant reassurance that everything's wonderful. I think really you're far more getting value out of people talking about what they see and what they feel at the time.
Well,
You know, like, people have shit games and you talk about it. Some people have great games and you talk about it. They can't all be great all the time.
so I went to a certain message board. I won't name what it is, but fucking I've seen one person push Ned Long for about 6 months there, and there's people constantly been pushing back. No, he's slow, his skills are bad, whatever. Now that he's had a couple of good games, all these people are behaving like they've been championing him for fucking 6 months. One of the guys is just so laughable in the way he's now fully espousing how worthwhile Long is after regularly undermining his input. And I think this is really typical of some Collingwood supporters too. It's like, hey, it's okay if I criticize someone because the moment they play well, I will champion them, and my criticism will be like it never existed. And these fucking really short memories. Yesterday, great team effort. But there was a couple of players that, I thought, outside of that, the goal that Hoskin Elliot kicked, I didn't think he had a great game. And I look at him and think, you'd seriously be considering an upgrade now, wouldn't you? There's got to be someone in the reserves that you'd want to be bringing up, whether it's, Ed Allen and giving him more game time or one of the others down there. So what do you think of Hoskin Elliott's game?
Yeah, look, it was quiet, but you look at the performances of those around him, and like I said, all of them can't just be dominant. It'd be impossible. He did a couple of cameo pieces, and it was enough. I mean, the important thing, I guess, when you look at the quiet games, is that it really doesn't contain too many fuck ups. That they're not damaging. Like Perryman probably was the only one I looked at and thought, well, I think you panicked a bit under pressure there a couple of times, but surely you come away better for that experience, and that's
Yeah,
the sort of stuff you want to get out of it. at this stage. It's like you're playing for Collingwood now, and the big crowds, big noise, and big pressure is going to be part of your match-to-match routine. I
No,
think that's probably a
I,
good little wake-up call.
yeah. On the flip side, look at Perryman. Yeah, that first quarter was pretty egregious, but I mean, he's being, So let me reframe this. Hoskin and Elliot has a history of being relatively quiet outside of a few cameos. They love him because they can move him around wherever they need to move him
Yeah,
around. But in terms of when you take it all into context, or his performances since 2017, I guess. But the last couple of years, you're not really getting input that I would want from someone like him. And how old is he now? He's probably about 30 himself.
yeah,
The one thing I like about Long demanding a position, basically playing so well that the coach has said, yeah, you won't be sub again. Is you're getting some youth into the side, and you're actually starting to get a bit of that turnover in terms of the list. And I just sort of think Hoskin Elliott, unless you're sort of getting more from him, here's one with his performances, I think, meriting that. Well, maybe we need to look and see what the next generation offers.
yeah. You often hear Fly justifying it a little bit by talking about them playing a particular role. We're never privy to what that role is, but they've executed it well. And I think it's just kind of speak for saying, well, quiet is quiet, but they're out there still doing a part, and the part that we want them to play. It's like an inclusive thing. And, I don't think you'll never hear a coach come out and they outright bag players unless it's Fags talking to Zorko.
Well,
But
Malcolm Blight did it.
yeah, that was 16,000 years ago.
Yep.
But yeah, in this day and age, it tends to be a bit more of a supportive and inclusive environment. I'm sure those things are discussed outside with the reviews and all that sort of things about what they did well and what they didn't do well. Unless Bernard's running the video, then he just watches the stuff that's all good.
Well,
Yeah,
it's so for like probably younger listeners. I don't know how many we have. Years ago when Malcolm
rough.
Blight coached Adelaide in the late 90s, they had a loss in the press conference. Blight just highlighted their ruckman Pittman. They just said he was pitiful or pathetic. I can't remember which one it was. And I really just sort of go back there and I think, did Malcolm Blight think about Pittman's mother when he said that?
There was one thing I wanted to touch on just to get back onto the game for 5 seconds. Is that I thought that's probably the most physical we've been under Fly in that particular game,
Yeah.
and that in the face really got into Brisbane's mind and got under their skin, and that rattled them in the end. The way that Maynard was just battering, ramming everyone, even Wisp, Nick Dacos was just getting in there and throwing the chest and the shoves and all that sort of thing, and they were niggling and they were verbaling and everything, and it really, really across the board unsettled them. I remember sitting there thinking last night a little bit that this sort of starts to remind me a little bit of how Brisbane used to play in the early 2000s, and whether that's maybe some of the mantra this year about, we've built bigger bodies, we're playing an older side. Let's play aggressively as well. We haven't seen much of it coming into this game, but certainly it had an impact. I thought a massive impact on the outcome.
Yeah, I actually think it was relatively quiet, and I think a few times he was just caught massively out of position. But Frampton, I actually think is good for stuff like that too, because he's a bit of a mongrel that he gets in people's faces.
Yeah,
Um, and we generally have never. I think you have to go back to 90 to really recognize a list. I mean, that 90 list would they had guys there who would just run for you if in the way. I mean, Craig Kelly, Christian, Barwick, Mullane. They had a number of players who were just really, really tough at it. And since then, we haven't really been recognised for that sort of mongrel. Hawthorn's had that unsociable football. Even now, they're still recognised, as that sort of side. But that's not typically been us. So it was actually nice to see that. Um,
yeah. I did make a point in the messages last night that I really wanted them to make sure that they went ahead and completed this because it could be pretty much a statement game, and that statement's not about we've arrived or we're the number one threat for the premiership. I think it was a whole bunch of things that this is what you're going to get playing Collingwood from here
yeah,
on in. And I hope that maintains that. Look, that level of insanity. It's going to be hard to replicate that for every game for the rest of the season. It's still very early days. But I think it was a great little statement at the time of we're not going to be fucking easy beats. We're a
Yeah,
Tony.
I saw an interview with Jack Crisp, and the interviewer was Dunstall, Sarah Jones. I can't remember who the others were, but they were just sort of not sort of, but they were constantly tying this back to like 2023. It's like you're playing like 2023, and is there a feel like 2023 and stuff like that. I thought Chris made a really interesting point, just to say, well, he said two really interesting things, and one I really loved. The first thing he really said was, "Well, we don't want to really look back." And I was like, okay, cool. Look forward, because I think fucking some clubs just get stuck in, like Bulldogs, I think is a really good example. They've lived in that 2016 premiership for about 8 years. So I actually like that they're looking forward, because I think sometimes, yeah, look at the 90 flag. We look back on that for about 15 years. Um, but the other thing he said in 2023 was that like they came from behind a lot, whereas this year they've had a lot of more four-quarter performances. And I thought, yeah, that was a really good point, because if you look at what are we, 5-1? So of those 6 games, this one, the Sydney one, the Port Adelaide one, we just totally dominated from the start, and then the Carlton one, we dominated the second half. The Bulldogs one was more of an arm wrestle, but some of those games too, we dominated, but we just didn't convert it on the scoreboard. So if we were a little bit more accurate, maybe we'd be talking differently. But we haven't had to sort of come from behind and win like it's been our trademark in 22, 23, and even last year at times we were still doing it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I wanted to read that I was while we were talking. Then I just quickly went out and had a look at. So Swamp Thing, which I think most people probably follows him on Twitter, X, sorry, had a little interesting stat up saying Collingwood in 2025 have become the ninth V/AFL team to win all 4 quarters in a game against both of the reigning grand final sides. First of the group to achieve the feat in back-to-back games. I think that's something that I think internally we'd be fucking celebrating the roof off. And again, it comes back to that statement thing about, I think if you want to put some fear into the competition about who we are, that's it. We just smacked around the last two no, not premiers, grand finalists.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
going back, Mason Coxey, what
Yep.
do you think outside his terrible goal kicking, which is, I mean, he's been Collingwooderized, he was actually a pretty reliable kick, but he's been there a while now, so he's just playing true to form. But what do you think about his game in general?
Yeah, look, I thought it was pretty good. Look, I really liked the tactic that Fly had about bringing him in late, and that sort of then they could double team the ruck against McInerney. Who is it? Will Day or someone's the backup ruck
Yeah, I
at
think it's him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he was pretty ineffective, and that gave us the opportunity to really monster at the centre clearances and around the ground as well. That I think we did win the headouts in the end, and a lot of them would have been more or less to some form of advantage. It was a good tactic, and I think that's where you're going to see value in Cox this year. That as a true ruckman, he may flitter and falter around the ground, but he's going to at least bring the ball to the deck or tap it with some assuredness to someone, which is, in games like that when they're going to be high pressure, that first use of the ball is so important.
Yeah, so the actual hitouts were 18 to 37 our way. Um, Brisbane's average for the year is 40.7. So our average for
Yeah,
the year is 37.5. So we returned what we returned, but they were way down.
yeah. No, that was really good. I don't think you're going to see it every week, but it'll be good when it happens.
Well, I was going to ask you that. So what's ideal? I know it's probably going to be horses for courses, but Membry being that the other tall forward and McStay doing the relief rucking, or Cox being that forward and him doing the relief rucking. So I mean, Membry is going to be the better forward,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
that means McStay has to ruck, but Cox is going to be the much better ruck. I mean, I've said it for years. Cox, I think, is a better ruckman. Or they should have groomed him as a ruckman, but I think as just purely as a tap ruckman, I think he's a better ruckman than Cameron. And Cameron's covers the ground really well, takes a lot of really good intercept marks and stuff like that. So, who do you think? What do you think the template should be?
Um, I think the gut reaction is I like the three tall forwards. I think the ruck can be. It's probably the one position you can sacrifice. At the end of the day, scoring's a hell of a higher value commodity than most things on the field, and I'd see the return from that far outweighing Probably sacrificing some of the ruck dominance. I think Membry probably would get the nod a little bit more in those scenarios, but Membry, I mean, look, in terms of reliability for kicking, I love him, and he's good there. But you want him to probably dob up and kick a few more, but it's still early days. Again, my outlier with guys like that, same with Houston, is you're coming into a new system. Um, it's It'd be unusual for him to be so dominant right from the start. It's going to be up and down. So it's one of those things you're going to probably see more of Membry in there for the next 6 to 12 games, with Coxie flittering in on an as need basis. And some of it's also going to come down to the management. They're clearly going to be doing that week in, week out. So everyone's going to get a bit of an opportunity just on the management side,
I
not
was going to
just
say,
the
the other
need.
one is that West has been doing well in the VFL. So, I mean, he might force at some stage that they spell Membry or whoever, one of the other three, and Cox and West actually gets a look in. I mean, it wouldn't be bad to actually give him a game against one
Richmond or
of,
something.
yeah, Richmond, one of the really shoot sides like Richmond or North or Melbourne. Carlton potentially. 200 games for Jamie Elliott.
I'm going to name him.
Digsby 7134 says Billy Elliott looks sharp, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure Elliott's career was rejuvenated. I think you wrote him off about 3 years ago. So, what do you think? What do you think about his game? What do you think about his career at Collingwood?
Um, I mean, his career, 200 games, how many years?
Well,
It's true that
first year was 2012. So
it's been a long journey, but a lot of injuries because he missed the bulk of 18, didn't he?
he missed pretty
And
much 2 full years of football. 16 and 18, he just didn't play at all.
yeah, I think he's one of the unsung heroes. I mean, I think internally we all love him, and I just don't think he's got enough plaudits outside of Collingwood. When you look at the little highlights reel and stuff, and obviously you've got the Carlton goal and the Essendon goal and all that sort of thing. That's just they're the clear standouts, but he's just done so much so well over such a long time. It's just unfortunate injuries stop that consistency. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
oh, look,
go on. Sorry.
I agree. I mean, he's an amazing mark. That mark he took last year over McCain, and he took one against Brisbane on the wing, which was a really good mark. I can't remember who was in front of him, but he jumped on his back. And there's probably a time you're thinking he's losing a bit of his sprint and his leap, but that McKay one, he's leapt over a guy who's pretty much 200 centimeters. So, actually leapt over him. He hasn't put the hands in the back and propelled himself up or anything. He's actually hurdled him pretty much.
Stand on his shoulders.
Yeah. So, he looked like he was slowing down maybe a couple of years ago, but I guess the final years of Buckley, they all look like they were slowing down and a little bit struggling. So it's good that he's actually getting a bit of recognition. They did speak about him, like they're talking about Chris, because Chris will tie the record for consecutive games next week.
Jim
Uh,
Stock. Yeah.
yeah, but they're talking about you look at Elliot, just reached 200 games, whereas Chris has played 243 straight, and just sort of the ironies in football. Um, any final thoughts on this game?
No, I mean it was just gobsmackingly wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Um,
fantastic. And to do it coming off, I know Brisbane were coming off a 5 day break, but to be on the road 2 weeks in a row at the start of the year, I know a lot of our supporters were whinging about the draw that we had. But 5-1, would you take that? If I just said that at the start of the year, would you take that
oh,
5-1?
I'm taking it.
Or would you want 6-0 because you're too harsh now, guys?
I'm taking it. I took it. I took it earlier when my pants fell on my ankles.
Uh who do you sorry, Essendon and Anzac Day next week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are your thoughts?
Um, Sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat. I'm just having something to chew on at the moment. Um, I think we'll go in there raging favourites. There's going to be a little bit of a selection conundrum, I guess, because you've got, obviously Schultz he'll still be out with the hamstring for another week at least. Houston has to come back in. There's no one else, is there? Oh, Membry, potentially. I
Who
think
got?
Membry probably has earned a shot at an Anzac Day. I don't think we need the two talls against two tall rucks against Draper. Is he sole rucking for Essendon these days? Do they have a relief ruck? I have no idea who
They do
plays for
have some
Essendon.
sort of relief. I mean, they got a really tough game today against West Coast.
Huh.
Uh, it's over
Where
there
is it?
though. We're over there,
Mm-hmm.
so doing a little bit of
Well,
travel, but it's basically a bye week. I mean, that I sometimes think that works. We've talked about this before. That works in your favor because we're playing real football with real intensity, and they're going to be playing against a side that's just so fucking miserable that they're not really challenging or honing your skills, your game plan, all that. Um, but they are shit. I'm actually surprised to hear about how they're sort of like they're in a rebuild. I was like, really? Are they? So if they're in a rebuild, what are they expecting? A bottom six finish or something?
I,
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
I
I mean,
mean,
that they would have achieved the bottom six finish anyway. So
yeah. I mean, the pricks left for Anzac Day. There's no doubt about it. I think, if we're going to have another statement game, my statement this week would be fucking atone for last Anzac Day. I fucking, that draw frustrated the living shit out of me.
yeah, it wasn't so much the draw that frustrated me. It was more just why they kicked their first five goals before we kicked any, and they did it in about 10 minutes, and it was just like I'll take a draw if it's like a hard fought fucking contest going back and forth and all that, but we just played. We just didn't show up to play. It took us a while to get going, and then it looked like we were comfortable, and then we decided to fucking protect a 1 point lead for 7 minutes.
Oh, fucking insane.
It's
No,
just
it was a shit game.
Yeah, it was just shit tactically. The one thing yesterday is, and Gary mentioned this, is just that the defense is really knitted so well. And they didn't quite have that. Obviously, losing Murphy's a huge loss, but it seems that they've tried to find some patchwork fixes. And I still think just Frampton's a guy. He's the guy just to stand there at full back, be played
Yeah.
on the gorilla and let more play, as a counter attacker.
And yeah, they were, Frampton was showing up a few times, but I really, with the delivery that Brisbane were sending in, and the tall marking options they had, there was a couple of them that I don't care who you are, you weren't probably going to impact that contest.
Yeah,
They were just so clean.
Yeah, I mean, I said it a little bit earlier, and I don't think it's just Frampton's fault because it just sort of seemed the zones were just sort of off because the players at times were, several meters off their opponents. And it's just like, I think you need to play the zone a little bit higher because these guys are just sort of getting away. But yeah, I mean, I think Frampton's the guy. The,
Yeah, I
the
mean
reality,
that first half when they were yeah, sorry, go on.
I just say the reality is, as a defender, you are going to sometimes get beaten. Tony Modric kicked 13 on Steven Silvani. Wasn't that Silvani was a shit fullback. It was just Modric Day. That's just the nature of
Yeah.
football. What's your tip for this game?
Collingwood by 78 points.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit realistic. I'll say Collingwood by 76. Um,
Okay. You
so
know that one
just
of us,
we're right. No, both of us could be wrong. Sergio
both of us
Mont
could right.
Sergio Montoro on X says, "Great work, gents. If Long continues to perform at this level, not so much concerned about Allen, but not sure about where that places McRae. I think McRae, unfortunately, is just not happening for him.
Well, the coach,
No,
he's all right.
no, Finley.
Oh, Finn. Yeah. What do we give him another year, or did he have another year left?
I don't know, but the long jumping up sort of, you look at like long jumping up and then you get McGuan coming in, it's going to put him further and further behind the queue. And I think he'll ultimately probably be traded. It'll be one of those trades where they just,
Well, I think we had him up for trade last year, and no one was interested.
yeah, but I was going to say, I think it's going to just be one of those trades where you give him to a team and then they just give you a pick 50 or something back.
Yeah,
I mean, that works into like Ash and Prism. We won't be trading anyone into here as we need as many points as we can get. We have two father sons, McGuire and Oscar Loney, and two NGA prospects, Zach McCarthy and Jay Zagzina. Uh, all have started well in the Codes Talent League. So, I mean, they might be trading guys like McRae out to get the points for that.
yeah. Yep.
So it's actually, I mean, all these guys have been lauded the greatest players ever, but it'd be good to actually bring some really talented youth in. Um,
Oh, I think my plan's pretty simple to follow, and I've submitted it to the club. Is we just win the flag this year. We see a few blokes retire. We bring these guys in. We rebuild for the first 3 months of next year, and then we win the next 10 flags.
would you take that?
I'll take it.
Costa
I'm not about
Vassal,
it.
Costa Vassilas says Butters in. So we talked about this last week. Perfect grunt player. Thanks for another great show and putting the mocker on the Hawks. Yeah, because as we were recording last week, the Hawthorn Port game was just starting, and who fucking expected what happened there?
That was unbelievable. Our powers are astonishing at times.
Yeah, so you think Carlton would have to smash North, wouldn't you?
I'd hope North smashes Carlton just for this
No,
humour.
no, 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 no. But Carlton will smash North. You're going in vogue, what we did
Ah,
last
right.
week.
Sorry. Can you scrub that and edit it like it never happened?
Yeah, so Carlton will win
Right.
by 115 points, surely.
The North, they plan on turning up today? Bunch of pussies.
Probably not. Carlton, they just have these charmed injury runs.
If Carlton don't win this by 400 points, I'll go he.
Yeah, yeah. I think, though, in the show of solidarity after the game, Carlton should probably re-sign Voss for another 6 years. Just give him a little bit of time. I think he's just, it's like Bucks. He's just getting into it in the fourth year.
I'll tell you what, if Carlton don't win this by 88 points, I'll run nude at Maslin Beach to make Turts happy.
What do
It's,
you,
Turts was saying you can't go to Adelaide without going to Maslin Beach. He's there all the time, he reckons.
um, just quickly, what do you think of Good Friday football?
That's good. I prefer Good Thursday, though.
Yeah, it was a great Thursday. Final thoughts?
Um, Fucking great. I mean, as I said, there's not enough superlatives for how good and how dominant a performance that was.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a few months of frustration at the start. I think that was just, we needed a little bit of readjusting, and we pulled it off with the plum. We were absolutely fantastic. That is one of the best away wins that I can recall seeing. Now, there's obviously some clutch ones in the past that were fucking awesome, but that's as dominant a performance against the Premier on their own fucking backyard as I can recall. That was
yep.
incredible.
And sum up
Well
Brisbane in
done,
one
Wood.
word.
Hey,
Sum up Brisbane in one word.
I love Schultz's mum.
Okay, cool. So that's it from us for this week. We'll subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff, share. We'll see you in person next week. Later.
Yes, I'm Sly and I aren't going to the game. We're going to go over to his joint and watch, and then record the round after about 40 beers. So probably a must-watch episode, that one.
Okay, later.
See ya.